Hello.
Hello, Randy.
I apologize for the confusion. I've got like three of these meetings this week. I usually don't have that many, and all of them were rescheduled at one point.
Yeah, I wasn't sure with what the invite told you.
Yeah, the invite that's exactly right. I have no excuse.
Okay, no. I always wonder because if it just says CET, then yeah, it might be because I'm confused on the other side. Okay, what does it now mean for me?
No. I had one with these guys in Guatemala, which is a similar time zone, and they moved theirs. They moved theirs to 5 p.m.
Okay,
and I did the Guatemala one anyway. So
you're a wanted man.
and and I met my sisters. I'm visiting my sister this week, so
okay,
I'm a little out of pocket.
Some Easter time.
Yeah, different time zone.
Cool. So, yeah, well, shall we get started?
Sure.
Everybody, welcome to Into the Pit. We're here with legendary producer Randy Burns. We're going to talk a little bit about his past productions, his way forward. And hey, I'm going to kick off the meeting with the standard question. I guess I've been sort of asking everybody because we haven't had times like these ever before. How was the pandemic for you?
It was fine, other than being very isolated. My wife passed away February of 2020.
Okay.
So so I was alone, and then I lost my job, and because of the pandemic, and then I was home and alone. So just other than being really isolated, it was fine. I had no problems, and I didn't have any real challenges. I didn't have to go into the workplace or deal with any stuff. But that's why I'm at my sister's. Actually, I just came to see some people. I needed to
reconnect,
get out and go and visit with some human beings. So other than the lack of human contact, it's been fine. But that's been anyway, a little stressful.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. But yeah, I guess it's been like that for a lot of people. The isolation, personally, for me was heavy, and I've got a similar situation work-wise, like you. So. Right. Hoping for things to recover somehow, despite the Ukrainian conflict and everything, the repercussions.
Yeah, well, I did a lot of things though. Actually, I sold a house in Portland, Oregon. I bought a house in New Mexico, and I'm building a mixing room. And in the meantime, I've fixed up the living room of the new house to be the mixing room, and it's heavily treated and it's working really well. I just got some new monitors for those techie people. They're Audiodyne Core 5.9s. They're professional grade monitors, and they're absolutely fantastic. It's just the current state of the art, and it's amazing, absolutely amazing. So anyway,
are you embracing?
I'm in a position to really get started doing on the mixing now. So okay. I'm looking forward to that.
Are you embracing the digital technology 100%, or do you find yourself rescuing the odd device from the good old analog times?
No, I'm 100% mixing in the box. I have my equipment consists of a computer, an audio interface, and some really good monitors, and a heavily treated room. And I'm working on an even better room, but the one I'm in right now is almost identical to the one I'm going to build in terms of dimensions and so forth. So it's working really well. So anyway, no, I don't have any outboard gear, any outboard analog gear. Everything is through emulation in the box. But I think that the state, one of the big deals with mixing in the box is trying to emulate the sound of consoles and emulate the sound of that old outboard gear that everybody wants to use, the limiters and the compressors and the EQs and the channel strips. So they've been working on this stuff for quite a while now, and they're really getting it down. So you can definitely get a really high quality sound in the box now. You don't have to have a console.
Yeah.
And again, a big part of mixing in the box is emulating the sound of a console. So I guess a Neve console or an SSL console would be nice, but it's not really necessary now.
Yeah, especially if you think of a lot of people listen to the new releases streaming and on a little cell phone. It's kind of going through a Neve and then.
Well,
pretty funny, yeah.
It's subtle, but the nonlinearity of the analog equipment adds a warmth. It adds harmonics and warmth to the sound that is really necessary. You really need it. But again, they figured out how to do it on the computer, so you don't need an 1176. You can use a plugin.
It's all a matter of time.
I mean, the DSP now is very, very, very sophisticated. So, and getting more so as we move along. So
it's amazing. I find there are still many releases coming out where I find them to be, and this ranges from thrash to metal to all the genres basically, where it was very clinical sounding, very sort of by the numbers, and but now there seems to be a huge resurgence of bands that are going back to this really raw, organic, warm sound. Almost back to the days of Nuclear Assault and early Megadeth, and that warmth.
Well, part of it maybe, and I don't know how many bands are recording, but did you see the movie Sound City?
Yes.
The David Grohl film.
Yes.
So the whole film is really an argument to use 2-inch tape and a console and record like they used to, where you make the guys play it right.
Right.
So I think there may be the bigger backlash is not recording through a console and on tape, but just not editing, getting people to play the stuff right, and getting more of a live feel and more of a human feel on the performances themselves.
Cutting pasting, that kind of stuff.
I do think this idea of just playing it and having the engineer go and move stuff around to line it up on the grid is not the way to go. Yeah,
that makes for
maybe a tiny bit of that, but you that's not how you should depend on it. The musician should play it right. So.
It when they actually play it gives it that natural human error, that bit of push and pull that sort of gives it the more sense of urgency somehow,
Yeah. Well, Peace Sells. I don't think we could have made that record if we were using click tracks. Gar, the drummer, was from the fusion world. And he did a lot of very creative, interesting beats that you normally don't hear in metal. They were variations of metal things, but he had a unique twist on it. And their songs were complicated and had different sections. So they would move from one feel and one tempo to another feel and another tempo, and then maybe one more time during the song. So, and we got these tremendous drum performances, and it just wouldn't be possible if we were doing it all on the grid. And what we did was we made the guitar players play to Gar's track, So when we were tracking, we got the drums, and then we overdubbed everything to that, and then and it worked out. But hey, again, that's the analog thing. I know drummers now, they chop everything up and move stuff around and cut and paste and Yeah. So anyway, I agree with David Grohl that there's a real advantage to getting the musicians to play it,
Capture the
and
raw and
a
live
real
energy.
danger of things sounding sort of synthetic and sterile if you don't.
Yes. How was working with Dave Mustaine?
It was fine. I was a little bit enamored with Chris Poland's playing. In fact, I was just totally blown away by him, and I wasn't subtle about it. So I didn't, I would have done better if I would have given Dave more attention and more kudos and not so much fawning over Chris Poland. So I think that was the only issue I had with Dave, is he resented my incredible appreciation of Chris Poland. So, but no, we got along fine. He's really professional and very organized and hard worker, and no, they were fine. There was no issues there.
Because they went on with Max Norman, where the albums got so machine-like, the precision was just, they just went. The sole goal with Countdown to Extinction, I think, was to have precision deluxe. It was everything to a T, and matter of taste.
I don't know. I'm not gonna.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna comment on their stuff. I can talk about the piece cells, but I don't know. I don't know what they were. I don't know a lot about what they were doing on the other records.
Look, but fact remains that you were really involved with some pivotal albums, and a little story I like to tell is I'm actually originally from Namibia in Southern Africa, and way back then we were almost like you can imagine, like East Germany, almost like we were sanctioned and sort of closed off and heavily censored, and so you wouldn't just walk into a shop and boom, there's a Megadeth album or something like that. You'd have to sort of spread your feelers and get somebody overseas to organize you the LP, and first get Deutschmarks or pounds, and write a list. If they don't have that, then get me this and all that stuff. But getting to the point is, with us, we were so fanatical that reading your name or hey, Bill Matoya or someone on there was always like a seal of approval. If we didn't know the band that well, if we went into a shop and we saw, the album cover looks good, check on the back. Oh yes, it's got Alex Perales or Randy Burns. It has to be good. Buy it. Go for it. So that was always.
Well, I think with Bill Matoya and myself, part of it was just really being fortunate and lucky to be in the right place at the right time. And we had my big connection was Steve Sinclair at Combat Records.
Combat, yes.
He was the guy who signed, Death and Megadeth and Nuclear Assault, all those bands. And I was his go-to guy for producing. And once I had a few things under my belt, then the bands were happy with that choice as well. Yeah. And I just went from album to album. And when I finished one, they'd have another one waiting for me. There's another one. Here's another band. And a lot of them were just really great bands. And, I think that was a particularly great era for metal music. It was a scene. I got to participate a little bit in the LA punk scene as well. Before that,
I didn't know that.
1980, I did a compilation of punk bands. It's called Hell Comes to Your House. We had Social Distortion on it, and 45 Grave, and Christian Death.
Okay.
And so I was very, very fortunate in that to be in the right place at the right time and get to work with all of these great punk bands. So I sort of got the first wave I got was the punk bands, and then that led me to Suicidal Tendencies. And then Megadeth said, if you did Suicidal Tendencies, you're okay. We'll go. Okay. You're okay. We'll work with you. So
Good.
that was the credit that convinced them that I was okay. So yeah, part of it is just being in the right place at the right time. You know, it was an amazing run, you know, where there were just so many great bands coming out. I don't know, is there, you can help me with this, is there another period in metal history where they had so many, you know, great bands in a row?
I guess the only thing that would spring to mind now for me, I'm not that clued up with a lot of the new metal going around, but the next thing that I think happened after the thrash movement is basically the death metal movement, and that would be, yeah, well, then Scott Burns comes to mind, you know, of Morris
Right.
Sound. And they had a run, and that ended. And then there was Thomas Skogsberg in Sweden, who did the whole Sweden death stuff. And nowadays it's like, it's Jacob Hansen, and there's so many at this point in time, also here in Germany. But I can't really connect who's who with which album at the moment. So it's
okay.
Jens Bogren is another one, and who does a lot, I think, Arch Enemy in those bands.
I don't know. It was anyway. Yeah, I feel very fortunate to have been there at that period of time and been working and getting that just string of albums, you know, back to back that turned out to be, you know, sort of foundational for the style.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything comparable to that time. That was a boom. It was incredible.
Right. Well, there was something similar, you know, in way back in the 60s for metal when you know, you had the original stuff of Black Sabbath and Zeppelin and all that. There was a period of tremendous creativity, and
yes,
a bunch of
yeah,
you know, legendary albums came out there in the late 60s, early 70s. There was a little, you know, that was a separate thing, but similar, I think, in nature, to where there was just, so many great bands all at once in a short period of time.
And I guess Martin Birch sort of came towards the tail end there. He did a lot of Iron Maiden albums, and if I'm not mistaken, he also worked on some Purple albums. So yeah, that was that era.
Yeah. Anyway.
So what amazes me is, so your repertoire must have crossed over to Germany somehow, or was that also a connection via Combat Records to what led to Creator coming to you?
No, Creator, they just looked around at they were looking for a different producer after the album previous to Extreme Aggression, and they picked me. They just looked and said, we want to do it with this guy. He's putting out the good stuff for, you know, we want that sound. And we actually started doing that album. It was Noise Records out of Germany, and I don't remember the gentleman's name, the guy that owned
Carl Walterbach.
Carl, yes, Carl. Carl wanted me to do it in their studio in Germany, and I flew over there, and we started trying to do the record, and I just couldn't do it without all of my support that I got out of Hollywood. So I kind of had a methodology that I came up with, and a little recipe for making these records that were good and affordable. Basically, I would go into Music Grinder, which is my favorite studio in LA, and they had a Neve console with a Studer machine, very similar to the rig in Sound City. Same generation, same era Neve console, and they had a fantastic drum room. And in Hollywood, you know, I hooked up with this incredible drum track called the Drum Doctor. And what we would do is I would rent drums to do the basic tracks, and bring in the Drum Doctor, and he would look at the kit that the drummer normally played, you know, so they had 3 toms and 2 floor toms, and, you know, 2 crashes and a China here. He would emulate that. He would reproduce that drum kit exactly. only with his drums, which were all, heads were hand beated and tuned perfectly and sounded just incredible. And then work with the drummer to get everything so it felt just like his kit. Often the drummers would use their own pedals, because then they had the feel, they'd have the feel. They'd use their own pedals, but everything else was from the drum doctor. And so we just started out with this great drum sound, and I would do all I needed to get was the drums and maybe some bass out of those tracking sessions. And typically it'd be 2-3 days. I think Megadeth, we had 4 days to get the tracks down. And then I would go into a really inexpensive studio, a small studio, where we would record guitars and vocals, because you can record guitars and vocals pretty much anywhere. You close mic them, and whereas the drums, you need a space where the drums sound good in the space. And then I would do all the overdubs in a small studio where it was inexpensive and we could take our time. And then we go back and do a mix on the Neve console when we were done, and get that Neve Studer sound. And anyway, this worked. It just worked. It was just spending the right amount of money on the right things in order to get the high quality sound without spending a huge amount of money. So I was very popular with Combat Records and the other record companies, because I was doing these things on a reasonable budget.
That makes sense if you have your connections at home. Yeah.
Right. So anyway, it didn't. I convinced Carl to bring the band to LA and let me use all of my usual stuff. So, and I had other connections in LA too, like Soldano. Soldano was the guy that created the amps. He was a guitar tech and souped up people's Marshalls for them in Hollywood. And if you needed to rent a Marshall, you wanted to rent one from him. So early on, I was renting Marshalls that he had modified, and then later I used the actual Soldanos. But I had connections like that, so I could get things that you just couldn't get elsewhere. So anyway,
I can imagine Germany was probably not geared for that.
I'm sorry?
I can imagine the situation in Germany not being geared up for that.
Right. No, I didn't have any of those resources, and I was really dependent on them to do the thing that I was doing. So it was fun being in Germany, though, and it was great working with the band. That was Milla's like all the rest of these guys that are really good. He's a really hard worker, very organized, and knew exactly what he wanted to do.
And for me personally, I think those two albums, Extreme Aggression and Coma, were what really put Creator on the map. And not only that, I think that's what laid the groundwork for them to be so big nowadays. They're like the biggest of the German wave of that time, and still up there and still pulling the crowds. And it was, from a sound perspective, I think it was a huge leap from Terrible Certainty to Extreme. And
yeah, it was good. I like that record. So
it was definitely yes. And more albums. I mean, Dark Angel Darkness Descends, probably my all-time favorite thrash album of all time. I think there's hardly an album that captures the energy and the ferocity. It's whilst retaining the clarity.
Right. We were trying to do, bring high fidelity to that music, and it's very hard. It's hard to record that stuff and to mix it, because there's so much going on. And you got to remember, back then, no one had done this stuff before. It was new. It was all new. And it's difficult to hear all the parts at the same time, because everybody's playing. It's very dense. Everybody's playing at the same time. and you know, it's difficult, but we managed to pull that off. And plus those guys were great. You know, we had Gene Hoglan, who's just a
behind the
monster on the drums.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
you know, it was startling in the control room when he went and sat down. He's such a beast. He hits the drums so hard. It's just like he's truly unique and amazing, and really made that record. So,
Yeah, that's with a lot of these new, or let's say a lot of bands that came afterwards, with when everything just got faster. I mean, the blast beats came in and all that, and it was actually by default that sort of bass drums started sounding like clicking of a switch.
mm-hmm.
in order to stand out. If they had more volume, you would just have a, you know,
right.
It was just too fast.
Right.
Which in turn led to these drums where often I thought to myself, is that now a drum computer or is it a drummer? You know, it's kind of, there's no resonance, there's no warmth to the kit.
Right. Yeah, well, that's sort of the challenge with the thrash metal anyway, is there's not enough space, but definitely with bands like Megadeth and Dark Angel, you know, and back then they slowed down sometimes, you know. They had sections where they spread things out so you could breathe a little bit. And yeah.
These days it has to get more extreme and extreme and extreme, I guess.
I don't know. I think in general, some things sound better than they used to. People have figured out how to record stuff, but it still comes down to if it's going to be great, it comes from the musicians. You know, when we had Megadeth in the studio and we were tracking and we had all of them playing and we're tracking the drums, we were just so excited because it was clear, it was obvious at the moment that this was something really incredible and special and different. You know, there's, again, with being in the right place at the right time, those guys just came off the road and they were super tight and they were just on fire. And we got to put the microphones in front of them at that moment in time. And, you know, like catching lightning in a bottle.
I was about to say that.
There's only one moment when you can do it. And so it's not all skill. It's not, the point is to not make a mistake when you're there. You know, you need to do your job like a photographer or a filmmaker or something. You know, you need to capture that moment and document it correctly. And then your job is done.
Do you follow the current metal scene?
I am. I've been, in the last few years, I've been listening to stuff, and I've gravitated more back towards hard rock and more melodic things. I'm particularly fond of female fronted metal stuff. So and hard rock stuff. Within Temptation, Within This Moment, and then on the hard rock side, you know, Hailstorm, Lizzie Hale. I really like her.
Burning Witches.
And you know, I started out as a guitar player and had an original band. And we had a chick singer, and we were back in the days of Patty Benatar and Hart, yes. You know. And we were kind of in that genre of hard rock with a chick singer, and so I'm still really fond of that stuff. And
but female fronted bands have had a huge boom over the last few years, huh?
Yeah, I think so. I think one thing that's kind of interesting is the sort of symphonic metal bands, the more symphonic direction. They don't tour in the United States. You know, they only do Europe, and so it's sort of interesting. They don't even come here, so I don't really know exactly. I'm not aware about exactly how popular different things are,
Okay,
And then
that's
the
interesting.
other interest I have is sort of in I really like some progressive metal, um, and looking at things in that direction. So,
So,
um,
did you reach a point at some stage where you said, "I'm getting out. I've had enough," or how? Or was it the entire landscape had changed?
well, part of it was I had issues with drugs and alcohol, and I got sober, and um, I needed to be in a more normal world for some period of time. And so I arranged that, and then sort of got out of the music scene and got into the more normal world with a regular day job and all that. And as soon as I did that, my girlfriend got pregnant.
Okay.
And so
Life happened.
I had to be responsible and be a dad. And I just stuck with that for 20 or 30 years. And my kids are grown now and off on their own. So now I can go back and do this again, and not worry about it. And also I think it's really difficult to go from to get back into the music business. I'm still in this transition, or I'm trying to get into the business of mixing. I think that there are a lot of bands now that are doing their own stuff.
Yeah.
And maybe they go into their local studio, record the drums, and then overdub the other stuff at home. And I think that they would benefit tremendously from having somebody, getting a professional mix for that,
Yeah.
that take it to the next level. And so that's what I want to do. I want to find those bands and work for them. And I'm not doing it just for the money. I'm doing it more because I'm old, and that's how I want to spend my time that I have left.
That's the passion.
I could have stayed in the computer business and made a lot of money, but then I would have spent all my time writing business software for corporations. So this is what I want to do, and I'm hoping I'm going to be able to do it. And
that's basically the same that came from Bill Matoya. He also said it's down to mixing, and there is no studio work per se, as in five musicians in a studio, and you do the whole thing, the band psychologist role, and getting He said it's largely, like you said, people recording at home or in the way they do, and sending him tracks and mix it down for us, and that's it.
Right. So I'm hoping maybe this will help get the word out there.
Yes.
I've just gotten started. I mixed an album for a band called Leatherwolf, which I recorded in 1983.
Yes.
They're more of a classic rock band.
I know them.
You know of them?
Yes. Yes.
Great
band.
They're very, very good. And they recorded an album on their own. It took them a couple of years to get all the tracks done. And the drummer Dean got a hold of me because I recorded their first album, like I said, in 1983. And he saw me on Facebook and said, well, gee, let's get that guy. He knows how to make drums sound good. And it came out great. They're shopping for a deal right now. Sorry about that. They're doing the lawn here, I think.
And I see you've done a single for Night Demon.
Okay. Yes, I did it. I mixed it. Tom Hazard was going to manage me, and is going to manage me. And he got me that opportunity. I just mixed the one song for them. I don't think they use my mix. They're somebody in their band is an engineer and a producer. I think it's the guitar player. I'm not positive. I don't remember, but one of the members of the band is also an engineer and producer and mixes all their stuff. And the record company let me mix it. And then when I did it, I did one that was a little more rough, a little more raw, and then I did one that sounded more like their other stuff, and they liked the one that sounded more like their other stuff. So I didn't really bring any advantage to them. You know, if they wanted to sound like their other stuff, they just did it themselves. And the two mixes were very close to them. They had a little more cymbal than I did. That was pretty much it. The other one, they were identical. So anyway, yeah, I did get an opportunity there. I hope to get to more of that in the future. But I really think that the big opportunity is DIY bands. And I think there's a lot of that going on. And I think I can add a lot of value. I think I can make a difference there. And especially if you've got a home studio and not a good monitoring situation and mediocre monitors, it's really, really difficult to really dial this stuff in if you don't have the good monitors. I couldn't do it without these new monitors that I have. You know, I had to get to this level. And so anyway,
now with I've been toying with a bit of home recording, and I haven't been playing actively live for many years, but I know exactly what you're saying. And that's if you don't have the right monitoring system, I've often found that if I take the mix down, in inverted commas, to another sound system, it would not reflect what I had in mind or what I sort of heard on my machine.
That's right. That's right. If you want it to translate, you have to have an accurate monitoring system. And, you know, I think these new monitors that I have from Audiodyne are better than the ones we had in the big studios in Hollywood. In the big studios in Hollywood back then, we mixed on, we would do the low end stuff on the big speakers, and we mix everything on NS10s. And my current situation is so much better than NS10s. It's just crazy. So I'm very confident now that I've actually got a couple under my belt, and this last one in particular came out so good. Yeah, I'm ready to go now. And I'm confident that I can do it. I to be honest, I wasn't sure. You know, it's been a long time away, and it's taken me. I've been warming up to this since 2014. I bought my first computer and audio interface and installed Pro Tools and started messing around, you know. And then in the last 2 years, I've gotten my hands on professional recordings, you know, that were done properly, like the Night Demon. I mixed some stuff for Tom from Ellefson. You know, do you know who Tom Hazard is?
No, I don't have a connection there.
He's a singer, but he was working with Dave Ellefson and in a management position, and he co-wrote a book with Ellefson. But anyway, he was working on that project with Ellefson, and he got me access to those tracks, and I mixed some of that stuff for him. And
Ellefson is now running a Combat, isn't he?
Yes, he is. That's correct. He's also running Combat now, so he's got a lot of irons in the fire. Anyway, I've gotten, and then with this last album, and I've mixed a few other things that were not, you know, as well recorded. You know, I mixed an album for or an EP for a Polish group called Bloodless, and it's pretty good. It's pretty good, but you know, it was not quite the same level of recording as the Leather Wolf or the Ellefson project, which were very, very professional recordings, very nice. So anyway,
you had a moment where you said to a band, "Sorry, I can't work with this."
I'm definitely going to be in that position. There's, you know, the greatness comes from the band, whether it's, all that stuff, Dark Angel, Death, Megadeth, all those bands. The greatness comes from the bands. It's just your job as a producer is to capture it and not screw it up. And with mixing, you can take some raw tracks, and if they're good, you can make it into a really good sounding record. But if they're not good, there's nothing you can do. You're
take more out than there is. Yeah.
There's no magic that can take bad music and make it sound good.
It's like a bad photo. It's like a bad photograph. You can't Photoshop it to make it better. It's just.
I'm going to. So definitely, yeah. I'm looking for groups to work with. I'm looking for bands to mix. And if I listen to it and I really don't like it, then I'm just going to say no, thank you. And I think there's enough good stuff out there that it won't be a problem. That I'll have plenty of stuff to work on.
At the end of the day, your name's
one thing I've noticed, just like searching for bands out there, and if I go to Spotify and look at these playlists of new metal and progressive metal and female fronted metal and so forth and so on. There are thousands and thousands of bands that are very good. I think there are still very, very few that are really great, but the number of bands that are professional and perform at a high level and have good recordings, there's a lot of them. It's it's amazing. I pulled up a playlist on Spotify the other day with female fronted bands, and there were 1,200 songs, and I think like 450 bands or something like that. And it's just one playlist. And so I'm starting to get a handle on seeing certain ones and say, okay, here are the big guys, because they show up over and over. But there are so many. I think there are so many people that could benefit from having someone with experience and a professional monitoring situation work on their stuff.
Yeah, I think that's gotten lost a little bit, but it's probably because of this. The technology has become so affordable. You're now basically having such a large chunk of what used to be in big studios and almost unattainable if you didn't have a label backing you. You can now sort of put into your own home, But on the other side, now everybody's obviously doing it, but that doesn't mean you've got the ears.
That's right. And that was the big thing about doing this Leatherwolf record is it came out so good. And I'm really confident now that I still have the good ears, and that is a critical part of it. And it's not, the frequency response that you can hear.
Yes.
I probably lost a little high end over the years, but it's all relative. And it's being able to hear the music. So I can still do that. And I'm very encouraged at this point.
It's so funny. When we recorded for the first time, it was in Namibia. And believe it or not, they actually had a big studio with Studers.
Right.
And I think it even was something like a Neve. But now us inexperienced musicians, when the engineer said he's now going to play it back to us, he always put it so soft. And I couldn't understand that. I said, yeah, crack it, man, so we can hear it. And he says, no, this is a better way of me hearing if every instrument pops, it comes out. I don't know. I don't know what you think of that, but yeah, in the beginning, it sort of puzzled me a little bit. But I can understand now that if it's just loud all the time, you sort of lose perspective.
Well, I think for tracking, and when you're playing it back to bands, you should definitely play it back pretty loud on the big speakers, and your big speakers should be a reasonably loud playback. For some mixing purposes, particularly when you're trying to get levels, sometimes a really low volume is good for certain things. But I don't think in that particular case, there's no way. If the band goes out and plays it and they come in, I'm going to put it on the big speakers and turn it up loud. So because that's, they're used to feeling the kick drum. They're used to being in the room with the kick drum and their Marshall, and feeling the ground move when they palm mute their low strings on the Marshall. The ground moves too.
Yes, it has to
so
chug.
They need something like that to know if it's good or not. So there are certain moments when you're mixing when it's really good to listen at a very low level. You can accurately hear certain levels better.
Well, he came from a jazz fusion background, I think he often thought, what are these people doing to their poor guitar amps? I don't think he could understand why we would want everything so loud, but yeah, it was a learning curve.
The thing when I was doing this and it was new, like Possessed, for example, most of the professionals questioned what I was doing. Why are you recording this band? This is just noise, and no one's going to listen to this crazy shit. Why are you bothering with this? And my attitude was, I didn't necessarily defend it, but I took them seriously and said, these are artists and they have an idea and they have a vision of what they want to do. And my job as an engineer is not to judge, the quality of it. My job is to realize what it is that where they're trying to get to. And I took them very seriously and worked really, really hard for them. So I think, so maybe you didn't have the right engineer in.
No, definitely not. I'm convinced. Listening back to the albums now, I cringe. It's like, but yeah.
Yeah. A formative experience for me was, like I said, when I started, I had an original band. And we got signed to a management deal, which was basically they signed us to a record contract and then they were going to resell the record contract to a record company. That's the way things worked in Hollywood back then, around 1980 or so. And they took us in the studio. I had all of my stuff I did on my own studio, my 8-track studio, where I'd recorded the punk bands, and I recorded all my own demos. And what they did is they got us a professional producer and took us in a 24-track studio and recorded everything. And I hated it. I really did. I really hated it. I mean, listening back to it now, I can see exactly what he was trying to do, but we missed some things. It definitely changed the sound of the band, and I didn't like what they did. They were missing a big part of the vibe. So that was the point where, and that situation fell apart. The management deal fell apart. Our drummer quit the band and joined Survivor.
Oh.
So yeah,
wow.
yeah. Mark Trouvé was the drummer, and he quit the band and joined Survivor. And the management company wanted to sue him for breach of contract because they could, I guess. And I wouldn't go along with them, so they fired me too. You guys are done. You're done. Threw us away. And then I was, I just decided right then. That's when I moved to Hollywood to be an engineer. But the experience of being in the studio and having a really idea about how my band should sound, and having the producer just sort of do what he wanted and make it sound the way him and the management company thought it should sound, stuck with me. So when I went into the studio with a band like Possessed, I was trying to do what they wanted to do and not change them and not make them more palatable, but actually figure out what it is they were trying to do, and assuming that I just didn't understand it, and that eventually I'd get there if I kept working on it. So that whole attitude of the band being the best authority of how they should sound has always been part of my gig.
But look back now. We're still talking about these albums today. You know, they're still legendary, timeless pieces of art.
You know, it's very satisfying, you know, having done a couple of different things in my life. You know, I had kids. That's very rewarding. You know, there's really nothing that compares to that, having children. But next to that, it's making those records. You know, I have this, you know, stack of 100 records or something in vinyl in this room, and it's a, you know, it's a document it's a snapshot in time of some events that happened, and a very particular kind of a snapshot, a very particular kind of capturing and documentation of what happened. And yeah, it's good. It's good. It feels good to have been a part of that.
Absolutely. No, I think you've made history. Somebody asked me the other day, why are you so, actually, and also Bill also did. He said, like, why do you want to talk to me? And I was like, well, because you're an integral part of what the end product became. You know, it's like kind of, sure, obviously the musos wrote the parts and they played them, but hell, it could have sounded a lot different, you know, just so.
Yeah, they could have got that producer I had.
For me, it's just as important. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Randy, I would like to, when upon posting the video, plug all the links that you would like to plug underneath.
Oh, okay.
So if you
I really only have now, I've got a producer page,
yeah,
on Facebook. So we'll go with that. The Randy Burns producer page on Facebook.
I'd love to include that.
And that's good for now.
And I think
I'm starting to learn about Facebook and how to use it. I'm actually going to run an ad to. I made a post the other day where I said I'm looking for mixing work, and then it prompted me to boost this post, you know, and so I went and looked at what that was. And if I understand it correctly, it'll send it to everybody who's liked my page and their friends. So I went back and I invited all 1,800 of my friends to like my page. About half of them did. So now I'm ready to run it. I'm gonna boost the page and get that message out there again. See, I got several leads. I got 2 bands that are working on stuff that would like me to mix their stuff next year, or either very late this year or early next year. And I got a line on a female fronted band. Somebody sort of alerted, you know, when I put this line in there about being interested in female fronted stuff.
I'll drop the link.
Somebody went in there and tagged their friend who's a singer for a female fronted band.
Okay.
And I went and listened to their stuff. It's pretty good. So I'm gonna learn a lot about them, and then contact them and see if they're interested and let me try to mix some of their stuff.
I hope you. I wish you all the success. What I do is I don't only post on YouTube. I also have links on Instagram and TikTok. So I'll be spreading it quite a bit.
Yeah.
My channel is still growing, but it's getting there.
I will post I don't know if you can actually do it. You can post a link on my timeline, right? On my page.
I should be able to.
Yeah, you should be able to. Yeah. So just post a link right
I'll do
on
that.
there. And that'll be the main one. And maybe we'll push that out.
Absolutely. Randy, it's been a pleasure.
All right. It was very nice talking with you.
Likewise.
All right. We'll take care.
Stay tuned. I'll drop you a link when it's online.
Okay. Sweet. Thank you.
Keep well.
Bye-bye.